afternoon. So that's me, and this is on how to influence. It's always embarrassing to put up pictures. It's funny, I don't know if you heard this. These are my daughters, by the way. This is Taylin Tag Hamilton is her name. This is Tinsley Dane. And the one that's not here is this one, the Gremlin. That's Trinity. And if we had her first, we'd probably only have one. So, but she's amazing. Talking in front of people has always been very hard for me. I don't know, does anybody ever have a fear of speaking in front of people? Raise your hand if you have a fear of speaking. Raise your hand, or don't raise your hand, but I know you're scared. So, that means you're really scared. No, it's like the number one fear in life. People say they're more afraid of public speaking than death. So, I thought about that, and I thought, well, it happens to me. So I might get up, if I get up in front of like 5 or 6 people, palms start to sweat, turn really, really bright red, right? I might even do it a couple times here. But now I've spoken all over the world. I've spoken in Japan, I've spoken in Israel, I speak at the National Rifle Association convention in front of thousands of people every year. And it's because I learned that there's almost everything in life that we're afraid of is a learned skill. You're not just good at public speaking. You're not just born and you're good at it. Some people have some personality traits that make them better at it than others. But as a whole, you can go from being like, first time I spoke on stage, it was an accident. It went like this. I was in Pittsburgh. The president of Universal Coin, which is where I work, was the keynote speaker at the NRA Convention's Freedom First Financial Seminar. And I mean, he's the man. He's like won 50 awards for gold investments. He's won Investment Book of the Year 4 times on gold coins. He speaks everywhere. And so I'm sitting there, I'm in the front row about 30 minutes before. It's a packed house, in these huge convention centers. And he calls me and says, "Forrest, I'm too sick. You're going to have to go on stage." And I was like, oh dear God, right? And so I changed my pants, and then I went up to his actual hotel room, because he's going to give me his notes. And he hands me 6 months worth of notes. Because this is, if you want to know what the NRA is? NRA is the National Rifle Association, all right? So there's 5 million NRA members. The largest lobbyist group in the world. Okay? Basically, they protect, their goal is, everybody knows them as guns, but it's about protecting the Constitution, protecting our rights. If one goes, then they all go kind of thing. So it's a very loyal crowd. So Mike says, here you go. You're going to go up on stage, and I'm thinking, you've been practicing for 6 months. I can't read his writing because he's like a doctor, right? And so I'm just panicking. I'm just sitting there thinking, I'm like hyperventilating. I'm terrified. And he's like, you can do it. I'm like, no, I really don't think I can. He said, all right, no problem. We'll just cancel the whole thing. And the wait, I've been working for the company at the point of 12 years, right, at this point. I know what I'm doing. I understand gold investments. I can work with people one-on-one on the phone or one-on-one, but I had this fear of judgment, this fear of whatever it was. And so he says, we'll just cancel it. I said, no, I'll do it, right? And he said, you're the only person, please hear this part, this is where influence starts coming in. He says, you're the only person that I trust to get up there and do it. We have 150 employees for our company. We're a $100 million a year organization for one of the top gold investment firms out there. So you're the only one that I would trust to get up there and do it the right way, to say it like I would say it. All of a sudden, all my fear that I had was still there, but it was covered by this little warm fuzzy, by this guy that I look up to like a father that believed in me. He had some influence over me in that little group of moments where I thought, maybe I can. I went from saying, no way, to maybe I can. To then, he said, just pick 3 things. So if you're ever doing some kind of speaking, this is a good way to go. Memorize your opening. It's a little free speaking course. Memorize your opening, whether it's a minute or 10 minutes. Have 3 points that you're going to cover, and then memorize your closing. Because the middle can kind of expand and contract. It doesn't really matter how you're doing it, whether it's an interview or whether it's at Toastmasters or whether it's in front of 10,000 people. That's really a good format. Memorize the opening. Have 3 main points that you have written down on your hand, because when you get up in front of people, you just forget stuff. You forget your own name sometimes. And then memorize your closing. And then what happens is it becomes easier. Well, he told me to do that, and then I looked at my time. I was like, I can do that. I can spend 5 minutes just kind of talking, right? Because I couldn't memorize it in that time frame. I could have 3 main points about gold. That was pretty easy. And then I could have a closing that kind of wrapped it all up. All of a sudden, I'm thinking, I can do this, right? I get down there, and I'll never forget, I'm standing by the door, and I'm looking at the sea of people that are there. Some of them have flown from other countries to hear this guy speak. And I'm like, they're waiting on my podium, and I'm about to have to get up there. And I remember looking at the exit sign and thinking, I can still make it. I could get out of here and not have to do this. And then there was this voice that was like, this is a defining moment. And you're going to start recognizing those moments more in your life as you got, some of you are probably in your teens, and then there's probably some of you that are in your 30s or 40s, and there's always a nice mixed group in this room. But those defining moments, every defining moment that I've ever passed on, I've regretted. Don't live with regret, please. Take something else out of this other than influence. Don't live with regret. If you see the girl and she's in the library studying, and she's beautiful, and you think, I don't know, just ask her. The worst thing she's going to say is no. I'm just telling you from my own experience. I was fortunate enough to meet their mommy. I'm way married up on my wife. But it's because I was terrified, but then I was like, I don't want to regret. What if she does say yes? Blew me away. She said yes. And I have 3 beautiful children. The life I dreamed of, I live right now. Which brings me to this point. Some people look at me and they're like, okay, whatever, you're 38 years old. Yes, I'm almost 40 years old, right? I feel like I'm still young. And that you're successful, whatever. I own multiple businesses. I own a winery. I own a film company. I own a real estate company. I write books. I do all kinds of stuff all over the world, right? I get to do some cool stuff. But people disconnect sometimes when I tell that part of my story. So here's the backstory. This is where I can relate to anybody in here, because there's not a person sitting in this room that was more poor than I was. My dad delivered me when I was born out in the woods in Washington State. Had no running water, electricity until I was 15 years old, up in the hills in Washington. I was as poor as you can get. We didn't have a car most of the time, right? And I had a certain perspective, a view of myself. If y'all think about it right now, think about the voice that's in your head that tells you whether you're good enough to do something, or whether you're not, whether you should do something, whether you shouldn't. Mine, a lot of times, is this 12-year-old little boy. That's why I still feel very young. But I still feel like I'm 12 sometimes. When I was 12, I didn't believe much in myself. Because I had been beat up, I had been picked on. I got on the school bus smelling like chickens and rabbits and goats and pigs, and I'm wearing work boots and they're wearing Nikes. I was a pretty easy target. Just imagine somebody getting, I stunk. I would have wanted to get away from me, right? And then you tell yourself these things. You tell yourself whether you're worth something or whether you're not. You think about a job. Am I good enough to go try out for this job, to interview for this job? And a lot of people never will interview for their dream job because they never really believe they're worth it. They actually have the self-worth to do it. They talk themselves out of it because it's been their dream for so long. Mine weren't very big dreams. Mine was like, get a friend, right? But I didn't want to. So I'll just tell you though, there are a few defining moments. I'm on the school bus. I'm about 8 years old. This little kid sits next to me, a little taller than I was. And he goes, hey, want to play a game? Go ahead, dunk the Forest's Head game, or, whatever, a wedgie game. I just knew it was going to be something. And it turns out he actually was just a nice kid and wanted to play a game. So we're playing this little pencil, we shoot these little, and all of a sudden he gets off the bus and I was like the first kid that's ever been nice to me at school. It still is my best friend to this day. So I tell the story about him because he had influence on me too. So you got a kid, that changed me. I started looking forward to going to school. 90% of the bus was beating me up or picking on me. 10% of the bus was this one kid. I live in a small area, by the way. There's only about 10 or 20 people that were on the bus. But I looked forward to that one person that had influence. All the bad, little good, changed my life, changed my world. So fast forward, all of a sudden I became good at sports. So because I realized at some point, working on the farm, I'm not the biggest guy. I was pretty fast, hit pretty hard, both in football and in baseball. We didn't have a car, I didn't have a bicycle a lot of times, so a lot of times I'd be running wherever I needed to get to, so I could run longer than other kids. I didn't run like a 4.4 or anything, but I was fast. And all of a sudden I could hit the ball a little further. So I can remember my freshman year of high school, I went from being the kid that nobody wanted to be around to scoring a bunch of touchdowns in my first 2-3 games, and now I'm in the running for homecoming camp. And I'm thinking, how does this work? You hated me here, but now I'm pretty good at something, and so you're cheering for me. And so I had like a midlife crisis before I was out of high school. Because I was a made-for-TV special. I went from all I want is for these kids to like me to now they like me. Now that I can score touchdowns, now that I can hit home runs, right? I was mad that they like me now. one thing I wanted, I had, and I was mad at how I got it. Doesn't even make sense, right? They're just kids. And that's the end result that I got from it, is by the time I was a senior, I had forgiven anything that had been done to me, because they're just kids. Well, now, somebody's a jerk to me now, my first reaction is, you want to be a jerk, I'm going to be a jerk right back to you. They're just kids. If you can start looking at people as just still being a little kid inside, that they're not trying to hurt you, they're just struggling with something themselves, you'll start to treat people differently. You start to understand why they treat you a certain way. All right? So fast forward a little more, actually came to Lamar University to play baseball. That's why I'm standing in Beaumont still. I live in Beaumont. Been here for 21 years now, so I guess I'm more of a Texan than I am from Washington State. But it's like, I still struggled to believe in myself. I still struggled with confidence, even though I got a college scholarship, I got a girlfriend now, I got things that are going on, people are being, I still was the 12-year-old boy and doubting things. So what will happen a lot of times is, you'll do all these wonderful things, now let's say you do 10 things in a day, right? And 9 of them are awesome. They're godly, you're like helping people, you're selfless, and you do one thing, for some reason we tend to judge ourselves by the one bad. Quit doing that. You're not going to be perfect. There was only one that I know of that was. So it's like, pay attention to how you're judging yourself. All right, so that's the whole backstory. End result, I started working for Universal Coin when I was still a teenager. Got out of school, never finished school. Should finish school, right, babe? You should always finish school, right? I've had a lot of people that from these seminars that wanted to come work for our company here in Beaumont, Universal Coin. And I always tell them, not until you finish school. Because what happens is, I wish, it's one of my regrets, I wish I would have finished school. It will be something someday that I do. I don't necessarily need it in what I do. But there are certain aspects of it, I look back at my grandparents, the things, the influence they had on me, it would have meant something to them. There are jobs that I've missed, or I was looked at a certain way because I didn't have that degree. So if you're here, give everything you got to it. All right? Now we're going to get to, that's the backstory. So I'm going to tell you a little bit. Does anyone know who that guy is right here? His name's Brian Tracy. Write this down. He wrote, take back then. But he wrote a book called Psychology of Achievement. By the way, raise your hand if you ever heard me speak elsewhere or here. So it's just pretty good. Psychology of Achievement helped to start reprogramming my thinking, my weak thinking, my negative thinking, and he was telling me, I'm reading these things and I'm thinking, the guy says that your dominant thoughts create your reality. All right? And then he quotes somebody, Earl Nightingale, that said, you are what you think about all day long. I'm just not buying it, right? Because in other words, what he's saying, and he said in all of his books, based on what you think about yourself, based on the whole vision of the reality that you create in your life, it's going to come into your life. You are who you are where you are because of the actions that you've taken. Some of you not so much because your parents are still having a major influence over you, let's say. But once you get older, like you are who you are because of the actions, the way you think, the way you act. And I just couldn't quite buy it because I'm thinking, well, if that's true, then everybody would be really rich and happy, right? If you ever read the book The Secret, right? They talk about the law of attraction. What your thoughts are, you bring to you. And so I'm just not buying it. But then I'm like, well, I'll try it, right? I do some of the exercises. That's why I like Brian Tracy. He's not just a positive guy, the motivational speaker that you feel all warm and fuzzy and then you don't know what to do with it. You go back to your life. He has these application steps at the end of his books. So I started applying some of the steps at my job. All of a sudden my sales more than doubled. I'm like 19 years old, and now I went from just in the nowhere, not knowing what I was doing, to applying specifically, writing down some goals, being specific about what they are, create a vision board, some of the things that people laugh at, right? I'm doing them, and then I'm doing the sales stuff too, and all of a sudden I'm salesman of the month, I'm salesman of the year, and I'm starting to make like 6 figures pretty early in my life, and I'm thinking, this stuff works. I would not be doing this if it weren't for this guy. So I start reading everything he's got. I like reading every business, he has 55 bestsellers, if that tells you anything. And the guys, by the way, he never graduated high school, right? So it doesn't necessarily matter what you do in your schooling. It doesn't matter. Please don't take this as an anti-school message. Okay? He now has a doctorate, right? But I'm sure it's one of those that they give you so many good things, and you get really rich, they give you stuff. But it's what he did with what he had. His junior high school teacher told him that he was too dumb to basically, he said, you're too dumb. You don't have the intelligence to finish this course. You should just quit. Essentially, he's like, oh, great, motivational teacher, right? So he did. He quit, got out of high school, ended up traveling across the world, being like working on boats and stuff like that. And then one day he met a guy in like the Sahara Desert. I mean, it's a phenomenal story, but he ends up meeting a guy that says, look where you are right now. At your age, you just basically crossed the world with no money. You do have value. You do have worth. You do have the ability to influence yourself and influence others around you to create what you want. And that struck him, and he started realizing that there is always a system that people can use to get what they want, to be who they want to become. Too many times we're thinking, I wish I was like that, and you do nothing. You can't wish you're going to be like something and do nothing about it and become that person. You can't wish you had a six-pack and then sit on the couch and eat Cheetos all day. It's not going to happen. There are a certain set of steps that have to be taken. So what he figured out is there's this little system that if you will study what it is you want to accomplish, right? He told the story of how he did sales. He went door-to-door sales for 3 months. This is when he got back from the trip, and he's all excited, and he goes, I'm gonna become a great salesman. So he does door-to-door sales, selling like pots and pans or something, right? And he starts the same day as this other guy, and he's making like $300 a week, and this other guy's making like $3,000 a week after about 3 or 4 months. And he's like, dang, that guy must get all the good houses, right? And then he realized he's going in the same neighborhoods I am, right? And he's thinking, well, what's he doing? But he had this thing called pride. So he didn't want to go and ask the guy. So finally he gets sick of it. So he goes over and he says, all right, tell me what you're doing. He goes, oh, look. And he shows him his book bag. And in his little book bag is all these books on sales. And Brian goes, there's books on sales. So he goes, and remember, he thinks he's stupid and can't read, but he really wants something. He's not just reading to get an A. He wants something. He wants to be good. He wants money, whatever it is. So he starts reading these books. And then he's getting somewhere, and he's applying it. He started reading like 2 or 3 hours every morning. So he's applying it. He's having some success. And all of a sudden, he goes back to the guy, and he goes, well, what do you say when somebody slams the door in your face? And the guy goes, oh. And he pulls out like this little script that he'd gotten from somebody else that had done the same job. The guy had done some research. He's like, So he does that, starts having success. 2 years later, he's the vice president of the entire company. Like a multi-billion-dollar business. He goes from salesman that's struggling all the way up. And it's as he continued to do that in his life, to the tune of 55 best-selling books. He's built multiple multi-million-dollar companies. So I'm not just bragging on Brian. He was like the guy that I thought, I can be like this guy. Heck, I got at least graduate high school. That's what I kept telling him. If I can graduate high school, then I can do what he's doing. So that's another little tool for you, is that if you see somebody that's successful that you want to emulate, find something in it that gives you confidence that you can. Don't put them on a pedestal. I do a whole session called Pounding Pedestals. Quit putting people up on a pedestal. Don't look at these celebrities or these very wealthy people and think, I could never be him because. Right? Don't do that. Like, go figure out, how could you be like they are? And that's where all influence starts, is with influence in yourself. Influence in your own mind to believe you're capable of anything. I know your parents have told you could do anything. No, really you can't. Like, I'm standing here telling you, I'm with my wife in Hollywood 3 weeks ago for the release of our movie. I'm an executive producer on a movie called Enter the Dangerous Mind that just came out. It's got Nikki Reed from Twilight. It's got Jake Hoffman, Dustin Hoffman's son, Jason Priestley, Thomas Dekker from Transformers, Scott Bakula. It's got this awesome cast, right? And we're standing there and we're doing the whole like red carpet thing, right? And I'm like, I had this little moment where I was like, kind of like stepped out of body, and I was like, am I really standing here right now? Is this really my life? It's not about the fame. It was just the accomplishment from not having any clue, right? Not believing I could ever be any more than the poor kid that lived in the mountains, to, that's the only reason the movie thing happened, is because I thought, it'd be kind of cool to be in movies. Well, let's start a movie company. And then I started reading books and figuring out how that would work, and then started creating relationships, which is really one of the biggest keys. Every person you meet, I don't care if you think that they are of value or not. just share a little bit of yourself. Like, don't just go, can he help me? Yeah, okay, I'll talk to him. Can he help me? No, I'm not going to talk to him. You're going to be very surprised by the people in your life that you go and just share a little bit of yourself, get a genuine smile, shake their hand, see if you can help them. And they look like they couldn't buy anything, but they end up being either multimillionaires that really help you in your life, or they just end up being somebody that gives you a piece of wisdom that changes everything. Okay? I didn't mean to talk quite that long. All right, so we're going to talk about, I'm a 3-time best-selling author, assistant director of Universal Coin and Bullion, president and CEO of Poor Kid Films, Poor Kid Real Estate, and a founder of David Hamilton Winery. Why is influence important? Because it is life's true currency. Money runs out. You're going to run out of money. I've made millions of dollars and lost millions, spent millions of dollars, lost millions of dollars, and you make millions of dollars again. It doesn't matter, and it may be just thousands, right? It may be that your goal isn't to make millions of dollars. I've lived without money, and I've lived with money, and I much prefer to live with money. Because it creates, not because of what all the cool stuff I can buy, it creates freedom. Because that's really what an entrepreneur, like myself, that's what I look for, is freedom. By the way, you want freedom in your life. You want space to be who you are and who you want to be. And a lot of this is going to teach you how to do that. So it helps you take someone, it can help you take someone that has a fleeting interest in you. This is, again, relationships, jobs, inside of your job with a customer, and turn them into a raving fan, an employer, and a powerful referral machine all in one. You can also do it using a method that's authentic, natural, and enjoyable for both of you. All right, so I've read a book probably 50 times by now. It's called Influence by Robert Cialdini. C-I-A, write this down, C-I-A-L-D-I-N-I. Robert Cialdini. Most of what I'm going to teach today is based on that book. And I refer to that book in almost every presentation I do, and almost every teaching I do, because I think it's the best work that's ever been put together on the actual triggers that are influence. Okay? And then I've kind of put it together in a way that people can understand, so I say caress them. The different ways of influence are commitment, authority, reciprocity, endearingness, social proof, and scarcity. And by the way, if you want these, I had quite a few people last time that emailed me requesting copies of the slides. Most speakers don't really do that because it's like a lot of their work put into one. I'm just here to share it. I'm not getting a speaker's fee for doing this. I get another coffee cup and some coffee. Okay? So if you want the slides, it's Forrest, F-O-R-E-S-T, at forresthamilton.com. Just email me, say that you saw me at Lamar and you'd like a copy of the slides, because I may not get through all of them because I tend to talk a lot. People's ability to understand the factors that affect their behavior is surprisingly cool. There's Dr. Robert Chaucer. All right, so commitment. Commitment is the state or quality of being dedicated to a cause or an activity. Think about that, the state or quality of being dedicated to a cause or an activity. Think about in your life the things that you've been truly committed to. Not just something you wanted, but something that you were truly committed to. I'll bet that you either achieved it or you're on your way to achieving it. If not, that means you quit on it. And that's most likely the only reason you don't have it. You can say it's because of all the reasons you quit, but it's really just because you quit. Think about, the Thomas Edison story. Thomas Edison, there's a guy named Napoleon Hill. Anybody read Think and Grow Rich in here? Write that book down. Write down Think and Grow Rich. I wrote a book called Think and Grow Rich Today. And it just came out last year, and it's with the Napoleon Hill Foundation. That's probably other than the Bible and Psychology of Achievement. Think and Grow Rich completely changed how I look at life. And Napoleon Hill, who was the author of that, he went around and interviewed the top minds, the wealthiest people in America. I'm talking Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Wanamaker, Wrigley, presidents at that time. And he interviewed these people for 20 years. He was a journalist, reporter, and he interviewed them for 20 years, and then he spent 5 years after that writing this book, Think and Grow Rich. So it basically is all the commonalities synthesized down of what makes people successful. Right? Who doesn't want to know that, right? So in his year that he spent with Edison, he said, how did you figure out the light bulb? How did you finally get the incandescent light bulb to work? And he said, well, it's easy. I just ran out of things that wouldn't work. And I remember reading that line. I was thinking, you ran out of things that wouldn't work. Well, here's some perspective. He goes, how many failures? And he takes him into a room, and it's a room full of these little binders, I got the binder, and in it are all these sheets, lab sheets. They had over 10,000 documented failures in the lab trying to get the light bulb to work to where it had a consistent current to it. 10,000. And the reason that he was able to go, continue, I can't think of something that I've tried 100 times in a row and am still trying at this point. I mean, how many times have you actually tried if I'm shooting a paper ball into a basket, 100 times? I mean, you're going to make it in one of those, or you're going to quit, right? He believed, even though everybody said it was not possible. Here's the other piece. People said it had never been done. People said it wasn't possible, and yet he's going into the lab every day going, well, that's not it. Oh, good, I'm one step closer. I don't know how you get that good of a thought process, but that's why at one point around 40% of America worked for Thomas Edison or his companies. Pretty cool stat. I read that and blew my mind too. Because he just figured out that he would bring in, he didn't invent everything that they say, he would bring people in, say, here's an idea, and then basically they would invent it and he'd get credit for it. Pretty smart. Delegating, right? But the real key you get from it is, I want something so badly, be so committed to something, that every time you fail, you get excited. I know it's a foreign concept, seems crazy. But you're excited because you know you're one failure. You're not going to make that mistake again, so now I'm going to tweak it a little bit. I'm going to tweak it a little bit more. I'm going to tweak it, and finally you're there. And you never know when it's going to hit you either. It's crazy. Einstein used to say he would fall asleep on a program that he was working on for months. And he'd wake up, and his subconscious, in his sleep, he had written the answer that he couldn't find forever. Because once he got rid of his conscious mind, all the reasons that he was telling himself why he couldn't do it, his subconscious would write it. Wake up to an answer. So that's one of the reasons he said he slept a lot. So, all right, so it's also a pledge or a promise. It's an engagement or obligation that restricts freedom of action. Remember that for the story I'm about to tell. An agreement to follow through with something. People do not like to back out of things, especially if they have given that commitment verbally or in writing. Once an employer, friend, or teammate acknowledges that something is important to them, they feel committed and obligated to follow through. So Robert Cialdini did this study, or actually I think he just wrote about the study. Thomas Moriarty. So they went to the beach in New York. A lot of people don't even know there is actually a beach in New York. So they go to the beach, where people lay out and get sun and stuff. So these two researchers, they lay down a towel 5 feet from another person that they don't know. And then they lay down and they put a little radio down. And they play the little radio. And about 5 minutes later, they get up and they just walk down the beach. Right? Then they have another part of their experiment come running in, grab the radio, and take off running. I think it's 4 out of 20 of the test subject, which is the person they laid their towel down next to, did something or said something, stop, or chased after them. Then they did something kind of crazy. With just a few words, same thing, laid down the towel, same distance, played their little radio, and then right before they walked off, they said, excuse me, will you watch my stuff? I'm just going to go for a little walk. And everybody's like, oh, yeah, sure. Did it. 19 of the 20 either stopped the person, yelled at the person, tackled the person because of that verbal commitment. All they did was say, they didn't get to know each other. They didn't give them any money. Hey, you watch my stuff. We're coming back from LA, and I go to get the bag. We just landed in Houston, and I'm going to get our bags, and somebody goes, I can't. My wife's name is Stormy. She goes, we can't leave yet. I was like, why? She goes, well, this guy asked me to watch his bag. I'm like, what? We're in an airport. And he's leaving a bag with a perfect stranger, right? I'm like, didn't you hear the loudspeaker? They talk about that nonstop, right? But the point is, she knows that, and what overrode it was this sense of duty that we have, this sense of commitment to a perfect stranger, right? And we still have this desire to do something. 19 of 20 ran after, stopped the thief, demanded an explanation, and even restrained them physically while taking this person's radio back. So how does that apply to you? Get someone to give you a verbal commitment. That's where the influence part of it comes in. Recognize the law, the rule that it is, and then find ways in your relationships, Please don't manipulate people. We're going to get to that in a minute. But because this is like superpowers. You got to have like a code. Once you learn these things, you can like change the world around you. And you have to be careful with it because, you know, it gets out of hand. So just know you have to have a code of honor when you're learning these actual pieces, okay? Okay, next. The process of a relationship, whether in person, on the phone, email, find ways to get the employer to commit to something. This is based on an interview, but it can be, you know, used for anything. Get them involved in a cause or goal that ties into the passions that they've already stated are important to them. So let's say you want to go get a job from Provost Humphrey, okay? Large law firm, right, in Beaumont. And you go walk into their office. If you walk into their office, you're going to see massive quantities of memorabilia. There's pictures of Walter Humphrey with, you know, Jerry Jones and Emmett Smith, and like he just is a huge Cowboys fan. And then there's also all this Baylor stuff, right? So he's got all of these things signed by Miles, signed by Robert Griffin, RG3. And so right away, he is displaying something that is important to him. So as a prospective employee, or someone that wants to create some influence with that person, I know right away I'm going to talk about Baylor Bears, or I'm going to talk about the Cowboys, right? I know that he likes that, so start taking little notes, mental notes, and physical notes about what your employer's like. Then, if you go on his website and you see that he's just gave $2 million to Habitat for Humanity, or to something, now you know something that's important to him. Are you like Facebook stalking him? A little bit. But it's not to be creepy, it's to be able to understand what makes that person tick. By the way, every person that comes and interviews for me, when they're prepared for an interview, when they have studied a little bit, when they understand what our business model is like and who we are a little bit, and they're able to communicate, you don't have to be an expert in it. In fact, probably 80% of the salespeople that I hire have no sales experience. And then they become good salespeople because we're able to teach them. What I hire them because of is because they interview well. That doesn't mean they're perfectly polished. Because they're honest, they're genuine, they find ways within, they respond well to questions. So don't worry, you don't have to have a perfect interview. Just be as real as you can, and if you can do some research beforehand and be able to speak intelligently, it really helps. Unless commitment is made, there are only promises and hopes, but no plans. Next. All right, authority. That was commitment. Authority. The authority is the power to determine, adjudicate, or otherwise settle issues or disputes. Jurisdiction, the right to control, command, or determine. Think about those words. It's a power. I just said superpowers, right? Authority is like a power. I mean, sometimes I'll be driving down the road and I'll see a cop car and I'm like, oh! And it's like, just a moment I'm like, wait, I'm going under the speed limit. Why did I just freak out? It's like a power, right? Because we have it's built into us about authority, right? So it's also, though, it's not just a power over our thoughts, it's the right to control, command, or determine. Now, it's a power that is delegated or given. So, all right, many people respond with a click whir obedience. So like a robotic one. So it's automatic. They see authority, they immediately just fall in line, if you will. We see it as a valuable and relief-filled shortcut. Oh, phew. You know, there's a car wreck, right? And everybody's okay, but there's still this sense of, what do I do? What do I do now? And then the cop shows up or an ambulance shows up, and then you immediately go, they're here. You might know more about it than they do, but there's just this sense of relief. So how can you, in your life, give somebody that sense of relief based on what is your authority? And so that would be the next piece that I would write down is determine what you have authoritative abilities in. What can somebody look to you as the authority of? I have a business coach. He doesn't like to brand people and market people as being experts. But he says, be an authority. Like he has me, I'm the authority on 5 or 6 different book titles, right? Who made me the authority? Well, my knowledge of that subject and the fact that I said it. Now I'm an authority. But being an expert, you don't want to say you're an expert if you're not. Okay? Authority makes people listen. I bet you that most of you could teach me something about your major that I have no clue of right now. So you're more of an authority in whatever your major is than I am. And so I would look up to you in that. Well, you need to find a way to convey that. First off, to have confidence in that. I bet I could spend 10 minutes with each of you and write a bio about you that would blow your mind. You'd be like, oh, that little chick is cool. Oh, wait, that's me. Like, because what happens is we put ourselves down. Back to the beginning of what I said, we tend to filter and judge ourselves by some of our worst qualities and not our best. So when I hire a new broker, whether it be a male or female, and they come in, one of the first things that I do is I'll say, what would your mom say your strengths are? And everyone's like, oh, my mom, right? Because what happens is they'll write a bunch of stuff that they wouldn't have written about themselves. Okay? They will write all the nice things that mom said, because our moms love us no matter what, right? And then all of a sudden, they won't tell me that, though, because they feel like they're bragging on themselves. Well, I need to know strengths. You need to know your strengths. So do that exercise if nothing else. Ask your mom, what do you love about me? Okay? All right, so same deal. Another experiment. So he did a study on how difficult it is to resist requests that come from figures dressed in authority. So what they did is they got basically like a parking deal. The guy dressed up in a security guard outfit, not a police outfit, but a security guard outfit. And he walked up and said, hey, see that meter over there? Go put some money in it. And then he walked away around the corner. And it's 42% complied with it, just by saying, hey, go do this, right? But then the same man, excuse me, I apologize, it started out just in normal street clothes. Said, hey, go put some money in that guy's meter, he's out, and then would walk away. 42% just did it anyway. But then it was 92% when they were wearing a security guard outfit. No badge, no gun, no taser, just a basic, costume shop. So 50% more people did what the security guard said. Even though he wasn't watching when they did it, that's the key. He walked around the corner. And they still did more. So there's authority inside of that. Next. Switch places. Don't chase a title. You need to not need a title. Be proud of. Don't make stuff up. It's very important. It's more important to be authentic and to be real with who you are than it is to make something up. Because then all of a sudden you get caught in a lie, or you get caught in a half-truth. And that's way uglier than not having a title. Okay? And then, let's see, tell your story. That's basically what I said. I could take 10 minutes, but what's boring to you tends to be dynamic to another employer. I mean, I've got guys that work for me for 2 or 3 years, and after 2 or 3 years, I start trying to connect with them a little more because they're not doing great at sales, let's say, and I find out that they were in Afghanistan, and they say they have a Purple Heart, or and you're just like, what? You know how cool that is? I mean, that you fought for our country, not that you go use that necessarily to create this manipulation. No, it's about understanding that you have value. It always comes back to that. All I do with them, just I'm not the best dad ever, but I'm right up there. Because I'm constantly building them. I'm constantly showing them they have value. I'm constantly explaining to them that they really can be whoever they want. And it comes back to, by the way, I'm also pretty strict about certain things. I don't let them win. When we play checkers, they don't win. My wife was like, let them win at least once. You're going to kill their confidence. I said, no. I'm going to make them know that when they beat me, they beat me. They will always know that when they finally beat me at checkers, they can really celebrate and not go, Dad, you let me win. They're going to know. I'll never forget. I know because my dad taught me that. First time I beat him at anything, it was like a party. I was so fired up. I think I got a whipping for it because I overly celebrated a little bit. But I'll just tell you, he would never let me win. And it created this competitive spirit. Okay? So inside of you, you got to find your competitive spirit. Some of you are athletes. Some of you compete in certain things. My wife says, I just don't like competition. But if I get her into a competition, the reason she doesn't like it is because she won't stop until she wins. She doesn't like who she becomes when she competes. She stops worrying about being all nice and stuff. She's throwing elbows. So you gotta find a way to embrace your competitiveness in order to do a lot of the influence that we're talking about. Okay? Next. All right. So Mike Fulgens at our business is a man named Mike Fulgens. He's the president of our company. He's won 50 numismatic literary guild awards, investment book of the year for the country. He's on. He's been on. In the Wall Street Journal, CNN, NBC. I mean, I could sit here and read you his resume and it would take the rest of our time. This is called the hero concept in sales and in business in general. Is that you talk about a person, right? and you help to build it up, and it adds immediate credibility. If you're going to go buy stocks, are you going to buy stocks from Merrill Lynch or from Moby Link? Right? You've never heard of Moby Link because it doesn't exist. It's a little company that popped up, and they've been around since 2013. Merrill Lynch has been around since 1920. All of a sudden, there's no question. Your mind goes, I want to go with the one that's proven. A lot of you aren't proven in whatever you're going to go do. So you have to find ways to create that same feeling of credibility with what you convey to your employer. That same feeling. How can you don't have a hero? Well, guess what? I didn't have a book. I said, I want to write a book. And I was so scared I didn't know how to write a book. And so I said, what's better to do? Try to figure out how to do it myself or do it with somebody who has 55 best-selling books. So I decided to go meet Brian Tracy back in 2011. And so I called his offices and they said, oh, sure, Brian, yeah, I know, it's $50,000 an hour to speak to him. What? Did you say $50,000 an hour? And they were like, yeah. Or you can come to one of his sessions. And I said, really, I just want to say thank you, number one, for what he wrote and how it helped change my life. And they're like, no problem. You can do $10,000 for 10 minutes. And I'm just like, I mean, seriously, right? And so I'm thinking, I got to figure this out. Well, I just didn't give up. This is where the not giving up. I'm going to run out of things that won't work is what kicked in. So I spent 3 months trying to have influence on his offices. I got to know every single secretary that was in by calling it. I would place orders instead of placing orders online on this big multi-million-dollar website. I would call in and place orders with people. I would send free coins sometimes. I'd send flowers. I mean, I was working and trying to figure out a way to get in because I just wanted to meet him. I told my wife, I said, if I can spend 15 minutes with him, I'm telling you, we'll be able to do business together. We'll be able to do something, write a book or something. And so finally, I get a phone call from this girl that is the director of events. This is after 3 months, and she says, Forrest, his inner circle is meeting on Friday. It's like 4 days from now. On Friday, they're meeting in New Mexico for this. It's 12 business owners from all over the world. They're part of his inner circle, and somebody isn't able to make it. So Brian appreciated your persistence, knows who you are. We've been telling him, and he would like for you to come. And the little inner voice was like, yeah, right. How much is that? She goes, well, it's $100,000 to be in the inner circle. And I was like, no, I just want to meet him. And she said, no. You don't have to pay anything. You just can't tell the other inner circle members this. Because we don't want them to know you got in for free, basically. You just pay for your airfare and your food and your hotel and everything else. You spend the whole weekend with Brian. And I'm just like, Stormy's in the car, and I'm like, this has got to be a trick. All these negatives pour into my mind, like, he's just trying to make money off me. There's going to be like 1,000 people show up. He's not even going to really be there. Something like that. And all of a sudden, Stormy's going, what are you waiting for? Say yes. When opportunity presents itself after your really hard work, quit trying to figure out if it's real or not. Take a chance. Say it. So I said yes. So I spent the next 3 days studying my tail off. I listened to every Brian Tracy thing I'd already listened to because I wanted to be able to speak his language. I get there, I walk in, he walks straight up to me. Forrest, you must be the guy that's been charming all my secretaries. Right? I said, I just wanted to meet you. He goes, well, gosh, by the time this was done, I wanted to meet you. Right? He's like, 65 years old and just tall and just, you could just wait, his confidence just comes off of him, right? So I spent 3 days sitting in a boardroom, eating dinners with him and 12 multi-million-dollar business owners that are way out of my league. And I impressed him because I spoke his language. I could finish his sentences a lot of times because I studied what he taught. I was able to be somebody that actually lived what he was teaching, which makes people feel good. And that's another piece you write down for influence. Validate those that you look up to. Make them feel like what they gave you helped you. There's nothing more frustrating than attempting to help somebody and they do the opposite. Then to give pour heart and soul and energy into somebody, and they do go and have failure. But when I help somebody, and then I immediately see that it helps, they don't even have to say, oh, Forrest helped me with this, and now I'm having success. I can just see it. I can just see them be happy. Well, that's what I did for them. I didn't just brag on them and say how much my life was great because of him. I just said, thank you. Here's where my life was. Here's what you basically gave me. Here's what I applied. And here's where my life is now and is going. And he loved that. And then I was scared, but I didn't look scared. I poured everything I had into it. So at the end of it, he's shaking everybody's hand, and he gets to me and he hugs me. And he goes, hey, I just want you to know, about once every 10 years or so, somebody will say, I'm going to be the next Brian Tracy. And he said, I just smile and nod. And he said, but only once in my career Have I met somebody that should be the next Brian Tracy? Of course, that's you. I'm like, you guys are like, oh, you know. This is like my hero, right? He goes, how'd you like to write a book with me? And I'm like, ooh, how'd you like to write a book with me? So, by the way, I didn't say I want to write a book with you at any point in the meeting. But I did mention how I did want to write a book multiple times. I did mention how it seemed big and scary and I didn't really know how to do it, but that I had so much to say. Sometimes I would be saying it to somebody else while in the same room and Brian could hear me about how passionate I was about someday writing, that I just didn't know how to get started. So I was planting these seeds and putting them out there, and all of a sudden, I'd like to write a book. 6 months later, we wrote a book called Pushing to the Front. Co-authored it with him and a few other America's premier experts. Became a bestseller in 24 hours, right? Amazon.com #1, right? And it changed everything for me because I was like, oh, I didn't know how to write a book. I didn't have to hire a publisher. I just grabbed onto somebody else that had influence in that market, that had already figured out the recipe, and I went and just basically tagged along, held on to his coattails. So then he calls me about a year later. He says, hey, you want to write another book? I'm like, oh my gosh. That was so much work, and I'm going on the book tour and the travel, and I really need to focus, and we just had another baby, and he's like, you're stupid if you don't do this book. And that was this book. It's called The Only Business Book You'll Ever Need. How about that title? Right? How good is that title if you're even remotely interested in business? Even if it's not really accurate, let's say, the title itself got it. He said, look, here's the people that are in this. Who's seen Jerry Maguire? The movie Jerry Maguire. Okay, well this is the real-life Jerry Maguire writer. His name's Lee Steinberg. He's the top NFL agent of all time. He's writing a chapter in the book. Robert Allen, who wrote the book Multiple Streams of Income, which changed how I invest completely when I was 25 years old. He's going to be in here. Brian Tracy was writing. Ron LeGrand, the top real estate agent basically of all time. He goes, of course, you're going to be the only gold guy in there. In the only business book you'll ever need. He said it's virtually a guaranteed bestseller. Okay. Right? So I did it. Bestseller within 24 hours of its release. Look, this isn't about breaking my arm, patting myself on the back. I want to give you guys the understanding that I'm a decent writer. I'm not a great writer. I'm a decent writer. The reason I have 3 books now that are out there, the reason that people call me from around the country and want to invest in gold or work with me is because I had a dream to write a book. And then I figured out, how do I write a book? Boy, this path looks really long and arduous. But maybe if I could do this using influence. It's not about the shortcut. It's about doing it the right way. So, I don't know what what all of you are going to go be and what you want to become, but somebody said, you're never too old to go and achieve your lifelong dream. Obviously if you're 80 years old, it's going to be hard to play pro baseball. But to me, there's many things in your life that people give up on way too early. I'm not going to be able to get to all the slides, but I'm going to take some questions. But again, if you want me to send these to you, I can. I'm going to finish with one more, and then I'll take some questions. Write down reciprocity. So reciprocity is probably the most powerful of all the tools for influence, because it's if I do something for you, you feel the need to do something back for me. It's like there's this scale of life. And whenever I put something on it and give you something, until you've done something for me back, things just don't feel right. And it's very powerful. Anybody know it was Hare Krishna's? Back then, there was a time where there was a religious group that would give flowers out at airports. Anybody ever see somebody give a flower, right? What they would do is they would basically walk up to you and they would say, here you go. They'd hand you this flower. And you're like, oh, no thank you. No. Here you go. And then a few seconds later they'd say, oh, would you like to give out a donation? Right? And now you feel like you should because they gave you something. Now I get these things in the mail, they've taken it to whole new levels. Right? I get these things in the mail that have a dollar bill in them. Will you please give money? Here's a dollar bill. By the way, you don't have to. Just keep the dollar bill if you want to. And now I get this one from this Native American tribe somewhere in Oregon. They send me a box, basically, of stuff. I gave one time. I gave like $20 one time. It wasn't like I'm a huge donor and that's why they're sending it to me. They've taken reciprocity to another level, though. They send a dream catcher. They send 10 packets of stickers that I can put my name and address on something. They send a notepad, a calendar, right? A tomahawk. I mean, it's like I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, and they want me to donate, right? And I'm thinking, this is this bit far, because now I'm mad. Because now I feel like if I don't do it, then I'm a jerk. So, and then I don't want to throw the dollar away. So, all right, here's, the money. Don't go that far. But reciprocity, here's how it worked in my life. I did car sales for a little while. And I would bring people in, from JK Chevrolet, I'd bring people in. Now they're going to go sit down, and this is where I'm going to start trying to sell the car. I would say, can I get you a Coke, Diet Coke, or Sprite or water? What would you prefer? I didn't say, did they want something to drink, because they might say no. Little bitty sales tip for you there, but don't ask if somebody wants something, ask what type they want. So that their choice is not a yes or a no, it's what type, okay? But I would say, do you want Coke, Diet Coke, Dr. Pepper, Sprite, water, what would you prefer? I'll take a water, I'll take a Coke, okay, no problem. And then I would reach in my pocket, and I would jingle the change in my pocket that I put there before as I walked out. So that they would see that I was buying the drink. I was buying the drinks, by the way. It wasn't like I was just going and getting them from the company. I did buy them from Sam's, however, so they were like 10 cents a piece, instead of, But I would come back, and I had this perfect little napkin, and then I would have a little tool, and I'd, pop the top so it wasn't my grimy fingers on it. And all of a sudden now, that Coca-Cola made me more money than you can imagine. It may have only gotten me 1 or 2 closes deeper into the sale, but that's usually all it takes. 1 or 2 more, because they feel the desire, gosh, he's a nice guy. And then, I was nice, but it wasn't getting many sales being nice necessarily. But then it was this little bit of reciprocity. As I look back now, once I became good at car sales, it was because I was doing these tools unknowingly. You get equipped today because you're going to do these tools knowing what they are. So again, Forrest at forresthamilton.com, and I'll be happy to email you. You have to be a little bit persistent sometimes with me, just because I like to, if you just send it one time, I may not think you really want them. So if you really want them, be persistent. Things have to be very persistent over the last couple of years. How many times do you have to call me before I finally connect with you? 4 to 5. Yeah, 4 or 5 times, but now I consider him a friend. We play Words with Friends all the time. So how many games do you want to play? No. All right. So what questions do y'all have? I'm open for them at this point. What you got? It could be on anything from influence to business to, it doesn't really matter. Parenting, feel free.
Are there any more opportunities locally to take
I speak at some of the Toastmasters events, periodically. If you don't know what Toastmasters is, by the way, that's part of why I don't have as much of a fear of speaking, is because the first thing I did after I met Brian, he said, get into Toastmasters immediately. He said, they will teach you the basics of speaking, and it's like $40 a year. Everybody can pretty much afford it. And they give you handbooks, then you're forced to get in front of people. Me, I like to compete, so they have like a competition. I was doing Toastmasters for 3 months, and before I knew it, I was in like the national championship for this humor competition. It's like so neat that it's how well it's structured. So sometimes I'll do like Rotary clubs, things like that. Go to my website, there's a few videos there. And on universalcoin.com, that's the other thing I need to hit, universalcoin.com. We are hiring right now, so as long as it's not going to take away from your school, we're not going to hire you if you're going to quit school. But we are hiring sales positions. We are hiring internship positions. We do some part-time. It won't be part-time in sales because we want you to be fully dedicated once you're there. There's significant amount of money that you can make if you get out what you put in, but it's one of the better places that I've seen in the world. I've been there for 18 years, and I could go do a lot of things full-time, and I still choose to spend 8 to 10 hours a day there 5 days a week. So, I go out and do all these other fun things, and I come right back to Universal Coin. So, administration positions, marketing positions, we're a $120 million a year business. So if you have a passion for something, even if you don't see a position, email me, call me, and I'll see about maybe getting you guys in, okay? Any other questions? Yes?
Why did you decide to start a winery?
It was my dad's dream, and so it's basically just like a present for him. He made good wine. He was like, he would make like dandelion wine. You got a picture of my dad. My dad's like 6'4", 250, played football at Baylor. Back then, I think he was like an offensive lineman, which, now he would have been obviously, like a tight end or something. But he looks like Santa Claus. He's got a white beard down to here, white hair down. When you go on my website, forresthamilton.com, at the top it'll say David Hamilton Winery, and if you click on that, you can see some funny pictures of my dad, and he's Santa, okay? But it was his dream, and that's one of the coolest things that happens with having influence and having success. Is I get to basically make my parents' dreams come true. I basically just said, hey, Dad, your wine's really good. You should market it some. Oh no, other people wouldn't like it or whatever. So well, if they did, would you want to continue it? Because that's my dream. So I basically bought him a winery. Now he has a website. He's able to buy. The fact that my dad is running. Remember, he just got electricity at his house like 2 years ago. He's still just off the grid. But the fact that he's got a website that ships wine all over the country, that he's so happy getting to do what he wants. It's an antique store and a bookstore and a winery. It's up in Oregon. We have a 160-acre ranch up there, and he's happy as can be. So to make somebody else's dream come true, basically. Next.
So Brian Tracy charges $50,000 an hour to speak to him. How much do you charge?
It really depends. I did a lot of mentoring. Those that have been to this before, I used to give all my information and say, hey, I'll mentor you for 15 minutes, and I was starting to get, I'd get home from working, and I'm doing 3 hours a night of mentoring at no charge. So, I'm not actually accepting much full-time mentorships, but if you want to connect, we can always work something out. So just reach out to me at forresthamilton.com, and we'll do something. Okay. Back.
Who do you owe most of your success to? You said Brian Tracy, you looked up to him. Who else did you look up to?
There's a very long list, but I'm going to tell you right now, the person that is only solely responsible for your success is you. I don't want to sit here and say I look up to myself, but if it weren't for me taking those actions and overcoming all my failures and my weaknesses, I wouldn't be here. So there's definitely people of influence. So Brian Tracy, Napoleon Hill, that Think and Grow Rich was just unbelievable. How much it changed my thinking, my thought process. Tony Robbins, I love how passionate he is about things, but he lives a life that is very, very diverse. It's very full. Right? He's able to stay in shape, have a great marriage, be very wealthy. He's basically the coach of coaches. So there's a very long list. Jesus, probably the top one, just because at our church we teach, the mindset of Christ. Whether you believe in all the aspects of it or not, I have never read anything that's written in red in the Bible that I couldn't agree with in regards to how to treat people. So, there's a long list. But the reality is, go figure out the type of person you want to be. That's the real key. And then find out you can do, they have this brand new thing called Google. And you type in who is an expert or who is the most successful or who is the best at this in the world, and then all of a sudden, almost everything's right there. My kids are like, Google it, Dad. They're 3 and 4 and 5 years old. So just don't accept where you're at. So there is somebody out there, those are enough to get you exactly probably where you want to be. But, I have quite a few professional athlete friends and clients now. And so I had the opportunity to meet, my hero was Ken Griffey Jr., and spend time with him and get to pick his brain. And so the reality is, though, set your mind on somebody. And then don't give up until you've not just taken a picture with them, but until you've actually gotten to, interact with them. And then watch how hard it is to go do that, and then how easy it becomes after that. There isn't a person right now. I think that you could name a person right now, and I believe that within 3 months, I would be in some way standing next to that person, shaking hands, and doing some kind of business. Not because I'm special, but because success leaves clues. If you do what successful people do, then eventually you'll become successful. So